Well, hello everybody. It's Wednesday, which is typically my 2-minute Wednesday skincare drill, but we are going to change it up today and do our first live series with a friend of mine who is actually a registered dietitian, and it's going to be called Skin Chat because we're going to kind of chat about a few topics that are related to skin, but also cover the bases that Claire covers. So I wanted to introduce her and go through a few questions for her, and then she'll do the same for me. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first, let's just, because everybody kind of knows me and is familiar with what I do every week, let's first start with you telling us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure. So my name is Claire. I am a registered dietitian and nutritionist. And I recently opened up, 6 months ago now, so not so recent anymore, a private practice where I see clients and patients in my office. But I have also worked as a consultant dietitian and a clinical dietitian as well. So a couple different areas, but I wanted to move more in the private practice setting just so that I could work with clients one-on-one and really follow them over time and create, lifelong change to promote health.
Wonderful. Well, I know you're doing fabulous things in the community because you've she's counseled my own father and did a great job, and she is just changing lives every day by all the nutritional counseling she's doing. So, and it's a lot of counseling on topics that we don't get normally. So we kind of have to seek that out. So we're all kind of aware of how nutrition can be a huge part of our health. Not all of us focus enough on it maybe, but we kind of know that. We don't necessarily think about though that our skin is really our largest organ, and how does that maybe impact our skin? So just on a general level, how do you feel like nutrition impacts our skin?
Sure. So as you said, our skin is the largest organ. So a lot of times when we have imbalance or things going on inside the body, it can manifest in the skin. So we can see a lot of things that are going on inside the body on the outside on the skin. So for example, it really depends on the person, what kind of skin condition they're dealing with, and their personal history. But nutrition obviously there's all kinds of vitamins and minerals that are structural components of skin and skin integrity. And then of course, protein and collagen is important in skin health. So there's a lot of different nutrients that help with skin health, and also just different conditions that if we correct those conditions with nutrition or help with nutrition, we can improve the skin. One example of that is inflammation. So a lot of different conditions may promote inflammation in the body, and there's different nutritional strategies that we can use to help calm inflammation down. One example might be a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yes.
So in that condition, which is common in women of reproductive age, someone might be experiencing a lot of acne. So this hormonal imbalance, which is often one of the root causes of why we have this acne, if we can correct this hormonal imbalance, which we can do with some nutrition, some medication, some topical things, we can improve some of the acne. One thing in PCOS is that we see a rise in insulin levels and male sex hormones. So if we can nutritionally, promote a more lower glycemic index diet, we might see some improvements in the skin. So there's just one example.
Yes, great examples of just the connection between our nutrition health and how that sort of manifests itself externally on our skin. Okay, perfect. So a lot of us are familiar with vitamins, multivitamins, specifically vitamin B and vitamin C. We think of vitamin B for, nerve health and for, just overall energizing, feeling energized. And we also think of vitamin C as an immune booster. So we kind of have ideas of what vitamins do for our bodies, but what are a few examples of vitamins that might help our skin?
Sure. So vitamin A is a really common one. And a lot of times when we think of vitamin A foods, we think of our orange fruits and vegetables. So things like carrots and sweet potatoes, pumpkin and squash. And these are all really nutritious foods, but they are high in beta carotene, which is an antioxidant, and it is actually a precursor to the active form of vitamin A, retinol. So we really need to be making sure that we're getting enough of the active form of vitamin A, because our body doesn't necessarily convert all the beta carotene that we're eating into active vitamin A. So while it's important to include those orange groups of food into your diet, we need to be getting some animal animal food sources of vitamin A as well to promote good skin health. And vitamin A is used. What you'll learn is that a lot of these nutrients that we're talking about are good both to consume through the diet or supplementation, but also they're used topically as well. So that's what's interesting, is that with skin we can kind of have this multi-system approach. I mean, we can use products, and then we can also consume a healthy diet. So vitamin A is often used with to help with acne and things like that. But the animal sources that I was talking about include things like liver and organ meats, which I know isn't a very popular food, but they're very nutrient dense. So if you can get liver in your diet a couple times a week, and there's different ways you can disguise it. You can put it in like a meatloaf or different things like that. Egg yolks are also a good source. So that's a couple examples. Vitamin E is another nutrient that's involved in skin health. Vitamin E acts as an antioxidant. So that's particularly important when we're talking about sun damage and those free radicals that can cause damage to the skin. Vitamin E, both topically and, consuming an adequate vitamin E can be helpful for that. And after this question, we'll talk about some food sources of all these vitamins as well.
Yes.
So vitamin C, again, another important vitamin for skin health. Helpful for wrinkles, and again, vitamin C is another one of those antioxidant vitamins. So that's a really important one as well. Helps with aging and prevention of wrinkles. There's been some observational studies that have shown that higher intakes of vitamin C are associated with less wrinkles.
Yes.
So, and then essential fatty acids. So our skin is composed of a lot of fat and lipids. So it's important to make sure that we're getting a lot of healthy fats in the diet as well. And we'll talk more about those types of fats and oils that we should be including in the diet. Zinc is another nutrient. It's actually a mineral that's important in skin health as well. And that can be found in a lot of different foods, but can help with wound healing and a lot of different things.
Yes. And I love that this is a list of vitamins that are great in a healthy diet normally. So incorporating these vitamins and the foods that contain these vitamins is going to be sort of killing two birds with one stone, because you've got the benefits of just body-wide health and then translating that into externally with your skin. So wonderful. So before we kind of wrap up on your part, what other foods kind of come to mind as foods that we might be able to incorporate or eat more of if we like them and just didn't realize the benefit that they might have?
So we talked about the vitamin A foods, so both, our orange fruits and vegetables, and then those animal sources. The omega-3 fats and the essential fatty acids, all of your healthy fats, so olive oil, avocados, those are monounsaturated fats, which are important healthy fats, but those omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So salmon and fatty fish, like sardines, are another really healthy omega-3 food. Walnuts and flax seeds, chia seeds are all really great omega-3 fats. And then, of course, vitamin C, we think of citrus, and that's a really common one to include, but also broccoli, bell peppers, also are high in vitamin C. Zinc is going to be found in some whole grains, a little bit of seafood, oysters especially, lentils and beans. And then vitamin E is found in a lot of our fats and oils as well. Sunflower seeds are a great source of vitamin E. And then another thing that I just wanted to touch on was probiotics and just maintaining good gut health. A lot of times if we have some things going on in the gut, that can also manifest as some kind of skin issue. So we want to make sure that our digestion is functioning well, and probiotics and fermented foods can play a role in that as well. So yogurt is a good one. Sauerkraut is a healthy fermented food. Kefir and kombucha are all fermented foods that we can incorporate into the diet as well, just to maintain healthy gut flora and just promote a healthy diet and all. And then also things that we might want to look at avoiding to maintain skin health is excess sugar and alcohol can be problematic for skin. And also there's been some studies that show that dairy can be problematic, especially in acne. So that sometimes can be helpful to eliminate from the diet and just kind of see. Sometimes it's really individual. So it may be a trigger food for someone, but not for someone else. So sometimes pulling things from the diet can be helpful as well.
Yes, I love that. I think that's a great list of foods that we should just in general be incorporating, but specifically pointing out how that might impact and help our skin. And with the alcohol point, many of you may have seen a previous video that I did that mentioned the relationship between white wine, higher risk of melanoma with white wine versus red. So if you didn't catch that, definitely check my YouTube video for more information on that. But that's all very extremely helpful information that you all hopefully can get value from and take with you to know what you can kind of incorporate into your diet. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Claire, for all that amazing information.
Absolutely.
So we kind of set this up, so we'll kind of be chatting, which means she'll ask me some questions now, and that might help some of you who maybe don't know me as well. And so hopefully this will be valuable for all of you. Feel free to share afterwards if you'd like as well.
All right, so I was curious, just because of your background in pharmacy, what kind of got you interested in the skincare business, and what kind of pulled you to Rodan and Fields?
Yeah, for sure. So I, as a pharmacist, worked mostly in a clinical sort of realm for, a good 12 years. Enjoyed what I did, enjoyed the interactions with my patients, but found myself very boxed in, very kind of contained more than I wanted to be. And I had a lot of goals and a lot of desire to reach out more than I could. And I just felt like I couldn't make those impacts that I wanted to make in the constraints of a traditional employee relationship with my employer. So I was kind of at a fork in the road just in general in my professional career. At that point, I had been using the products for 6 months. And as a product user, I was absolutely initially very skeptical, as I am with any products just in general, and just kind of how we've been taught in the pharmacy world, and just most of us are type A, so that's kind of how we are. But after 6 months was a definite believer in the products. As I was at the fork in the road with my career, I decided to just look into it more, as with it being something that I was so passionate about for myself, how could I then translate that in an approach to others in the community and my own circle, and circles that I maybe was not in yet, and taking a more educational approach, which is kind of how I do it with the videos here. So I researched the company, jumped full force, and so that's what I do now, is I kind of use that background of my pharmacy knowledge and skills, and I translate that into the skincare industry.
Awesome. All right. And I hear a lot about, just kind of with me being in nutrition, a lot about just natural approaches to health and healing. And sometimes I have concerns about certain ingredients that are in a lot of products, or you read about, that these toxic ingredients in a lot of different skincare and cosmetics out there can cause different problems. Like one that I hear a lot about is parabens, and that they might be an endocrine disruptor and things like that. And then the sulfates and phthalates, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
I was just curious what your thoughts are on that. Or I know that they may have a purpose in some of the products, but are they really harmful? Do we need to be avoiding them?
Yes, I think those are great questions. I was just going to move this back a little bit just so we can make sure that we're getting seen. So those are great questions, and I know a lot of you have those same questions because the media is kind of tacking on to the fact that a lot of us are just a lot more health conscious, as we should be. We should definitely be paying attention, as you know, to what we're ingesting internally and what we are applying topically, because when we apply something topically, it doesn't mean that it just stays there. I mean, the intention is that it's going to get absorbed.
Right.
And so which ingredients might be a concern and which might not be is something that should be top of mind as you choose the skincare products that you use. So let me just go through each of those kind of individually and touch on those. Parabens, and before I mention that, let me just kind of hit on a sort of a topic that's a general topic that, people have in mind, which is natural is better. And I want to point out the fact that a lot of things are natural. Bacteria is natural, viruses are natural, fungi are natural. And so when we use the term natural, we really need to be more specific about what we're talking about. So specifically transitioning that into parabens. Parabens are used as preservatives. They're used in preservatives in foods, in topical products, and consumer goods. And they're used for the function of preventing contamination with the wonderfully natural microbia that are around us. And so they have a function. Now, do they have some harmful effects on the body? Yes, in large quantities. So first and foremost is, what are we dealing with, and what is a paraben, and what is its function? Do we need it? And second is, how much of it is going to be a problem? So a lot of these chemicals can be endocrine disruptors in large amounts. In the cosmetic industry, we're basically dealing with somewhere between 0.01 and in some cases it's even less than that. It's almost undetectable. 0.01 to like 0.3%, and that's kind of the max, 0.3%. And so we're talking about a small amount, but parabens in general are some of the most effective preservatives that we have. And so knowing that it's stable under heat conditions and that it's very effective in very low concentrations, it is an effective option for a preservative. So we don't necessarily want preservative-free products that we're going to put on our face, because the minute we start opening up that container, whatever's going on around our bathroom or our vanity area, it's open, it can be contaminated. And so you don't really want to be applying fungus and mold and bacteria to your face. So you want some degree of protection against that. And how much is that going to be harmful? And just to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with, parabens are actually naturally found in some foods, including blueberries, which are amazing foods, in larger quantities than the cosmetics.
Wow.
So that just kind of gives you an idea of how these topics can kind of become a little bit emphasized more than they need to be. Not that they should not be, you should not be educated on them, because you should. It's just a matter of how much have we spun them to be now we're fearful of them. And for parabens specifically, in the amounts that they are in cosmetics, it's negligible, and negligible enough that it's not really considered to be an issue. And so preservatives are important. You don't want to put any bacteria all over your face. Secondly, you mentioned sulfates. So sulfates, have kind of gotten a bad rap for a few reasons. Now sulfates, like sodium lauryl sulfate, these are ingredients that make your beauty products suds or foam, and that can be drying to the skin. So we're not really dealing with necessarily a carcinogen or an endocrine disruptor here. We're dealing with more of the effects that it can have on the skin, which can be very drying and irritating. So if that's the case, I don't really recommend foaming cleansers for your skin. I think that will be, from what we know of these products, they can be very drying to the skin.
Okay.
So with that, I would just say, if a lot of your skincare and cosmetic products are very foaming and sudsing, you might just want to take notice of how that's impacting your skin. And if you're noticing drying and irritation, consider something without that sodium. It's basically just, a salt form of an organic compound, and you can find something and you'll see products that will say sulfate free. So that's relatively easy to avoid if that's becoming an issue for you. If it's not, if you have a few products that suds and your skin's doing perfectly fine with it, it may be okay. It's not that the ingredients that are used in place of it are not going to harm you either. So it's just kind of become one of those terms that we hear in the media over and over and over again. Lastly, you mentioned phthalates, which phthalates are used in a lot of plastics because they make the plastics flexible. They are also used in cosmetics because they can be like a lubricant. They also can be a concern because they can be an endocrine disruptor. And so the concern with phthalates is, number one is, how do you know if there's a phthalate in your product? You're not gonna, Control F or Google search, or even look at and see phthalate. What you're gonna see is fragrance, and the plastic that it's contained in. And so you're not gonna necessarily know unless it's labeled phthalate free that what you have in there is phthalates. So my recommendation for phthalates is, watch for products that are heavy in the fragrance. So you may have a product that has a little bit of fragrance as maybe the last ingredient, just to make it a little bit more appealing. Maybe not as concerning as something that fragrance is the top ingredient, as they're typically listed in amount that's in there, and that may give you a little bit more exposure to phthalates. The other thing to note, though, is phthalates are in a lot of products. I mentioned plastics. They're also the new car smell. That's phthalates. And so this is definitely not limited to the skincare world. But you can just kind of be cognizant of that and try to avoid too much fragrance. Fragrance is not imparting any benefit to your skin. It is just making it a little bit more cosmetically appealing. So just kind of be aware of that.
Cool. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. All right. So I know that a lot of the products that Rodan & Feel sells are sold in a set. So why is that? Is it beneficial to try out like one or two products, or do you recommend that people buy a whole set? And how do these products kind of work together to improve the skin? Because I know you guys have a lot of different lines for different problems that people may be experiencing with their skin. So I'm just kind of curious about that type of system.
Right, like how it differs from what most people have. So what most people have, and what I had before, was sort of a drawer full of samples and bottles and things that you've tried over time. You might have decided on a cleanser that worked, and then, a counter at Macy's had a free bag with purchase on a moisturizer, so you tried that. And then you maybe liked that, and then you ran out of cleanser, and then you bought the cleanser from the other counter that had a free bag. And so you've got kind of a potpourri, a drawer full of a lot of different brands of products that maybe were never intended to work together, and maybe, honestly, were never intended to work for your skin type. And so what we use is called multi-med therapy, which means that we use a comprehensive approach where the right ingredients are used in the right formulation and they're applied in the right order. So we have a very just laid out, specified approach of you wash and then you tone and then you have a treatment step and then a sunscreen-based moisturizer. And the intention of that is that each step prepares the skin for the next step, and that you're always ending the day with sunscreen protection. And it's not time intensive, but it's all intended to work not only together, but specifically for what you're targeting. So if you're targeting acne treatment, or if you're targeting, lightening and brightening skin discoloration, whatever you're targeting, each product is helping you with that, as opposed to a mismatch of products that maybe aren't even attacking the issue you have. They might just be, general products. So. Okay. That's the difference.
Makes sense. All right. And then about sunscreen, that's another,
we have some friends in here.
Is it necessary to wear sunscreen every day? I mean, we live in Florida, so it is important. It's definitely a concern in the summertime, but what about like now in February? We may not be getting as much sun exposure, and also vitamin D. We get a lot of our vitamin D from the sun because with nutrition, vitamin D isn't found in a lot of foods. And a lot of people, I see a lot of vitamin D deficiency, and it's because I think people aren't getting it from their foods because it's just not found in a lot of foods. So it's either supplementation or sun exposure.
Right.
And so in terms of that, how much sun is safe?
Yeah. A lot of good questions, and vitamin D is another hot topic, and but a topic that we need to be aware of. So, I used to live out in the Pacific Northwest, and vitamin D was a much hotter topic out there because we get a lot less sun exposure through the cloud cover that we have. And so regardless of where you live, even in Florida, it is important to pay attention to your vitamin D levels. And that's definitely a blood level that can be checked if that's ever in question. Vitamin D, so just a few kind of breaking down a few important pieces here that our audience may not realize. So vitamin D is an important vitamin for a lot of things, for bone health. It's even found to be good for mood health, potentially plays a role in cancer prevention. And so vitamin D is important. We know that we get a good majority of our vitamin D, as you mentioned, is not in a whole lot of foods. A good majority of that from exposure to UVB rays specifically. We also know that sunscreen, most sunscreens, some of them maybe not as effective, but most sunscreens are protecting us from UVB rays. And so we know we get that vitamin D from that, but we're using sunscreen to protect us against that. So what's the impact? What we do know is that UV rays are carcinogenic. So there's no question, we know that UV rays over time, the exposure to that can lead to cancer. Now that's gonna be different in each individual, but we do know that. What studies have kind of shown with regard to the vitamin D is if we have a very perfect application of a very good broad spectrum sunscreen, and we do it in a very controlled lab environment, we will see some impact on vitamin D production. And if we did that all the time and never had any sun exposure, the vitamin D levels appear to be a little bit impacted by that. What we are not seeing is that impact in a generalized everyday world. So in an everyday world where we might be cognizant of putting sunscreen on our face and maybe even our arms and legs, the reality is that we're not doing that every day. We are getting incidental sun exposure even in our car. Yeah. And so we're getting incidental sun exposure and we aren't applying it, number one, in enough of an amount to be as effective as it needs to be, and we're missing areas. So people aren't applying it to their ears and sometimes not to their necks. And so we have areas that are not getting the sunscreen that we need to really be having that large of an effect on vitamin D. So the reality is that it doesn't take too much, maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day for maybe 3 times a week is kind of a generalized understanding of getting us enough vitamin D. Most of us are getting that just in our car, just in the
traffic.
So yeah, and it's an understood fact in sort of the the skin cancer world that there is really no safe amount of unprotected sun exposure. Okay. So the reality is if you're going to be out for longer than 10 minutes, you really should be protecting yourself. And even with that protection, you're still gonna get some incidental UV rays, enough so that you will have sufficient vitamin D. However, with that being said, there is always gonna be exceptions, and maybe you are one of those people who applies it perfectly and has a really great product. And in that case, if there is a concern that your vitamin D level might be low, it's a very easy blood test to do. You just have to ask your physician. So it can be checked.
And then you can supplement too.
Yes.
Correct. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got, you could eat more of the foods that contain it, or you could actually take a vitamin D supplement, knowing that it is a fat-soluble vitamin also, so there's the potential for toxicity. So you don't want to overdo it, which that can be easy to do if you're not watching that. So.
Cool.
Well, wonderful. That kind of wraps up all of our questions. I hope that was helpful for everyone. I hope that you had fun. I already have lined up our next skin chat. We're going to have a wonderful time the next time around. I don't have that scheduled yet. I have the person scheduled, but not the date. I'll let you know. But I hope that this was helpful. Switch it up a little bit so you don't just see me. Claire, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I had a blast.
Yeah, we look forward to bringing you more value soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week.